Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Parul Agarwal, and a very warm welcome to all of us who have joined us online on the Zoom call as well as on the YouTube channel on this very important session today on planning for climate change and integrated approach for urban practitioners. Um, and I'm delighted to welcome everybody and who have expressed interest today. It's a very important and a very pertinent topic in the days that we are living now. The recently released IPCC report, Climate Change 2021, has provided data and analysis on what we already know, that the climate change is a reality and it is occurring at an accelerated pace. The adverse impacts of climate change are widespread and intensifying. The sea level rise is accelerating. Extreme rain events, heat waves, frequency and intensity of climate events are increasing and contributing to fires, floods, droughts. The role of urban areas as major contributors to climate change is now well established. Almost two-thirds of carbon emissions can be attributed to finite global energy use. And in this context, the theme of the World Habitat Day this year is accelerating urban action for a carbon-free world. India is ranked as the seventh most vulnerable country on the global climate risk index. Quite recurring in it features amongst the top 10 countries. So it's the topic is very real for us. The estimates also show that there is significant economic loss that is also attributed to the risks and the damage, infrastructure losses and damage to the tune of more than $50 billion. So it's a very the impact of climate on the social, economic, ecological aspects cannot be denied. While cities contribute to climate change, they also are amongst the most vulnerable in terms of the impacts. Um, and The concentration of people makes it all the more relevant for the policymakers and decision makers to view on actions that we can take on towards mainstreaming climate across the policy space, planning and design decisions. And with this, through this session today, we hope we can shed some light on what are the important aspects of climate, its relevance, and also work through some important knowledge material that would help us in applying this in our day-to-day lives, and our work. So with that, I welcome all our presenters who have very generously given us their time, and to all the participants who have also joined us. And I thank you. My colleague Adisri Panda, she will be moderating the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parul. And it's a really pertinent point that you raised, that we really need to sort of discuss and exchange a lot of knowledge material and make it accessible to all the practitioners that we have, so that it's not limited only to few people. Before we start, we actually wanted to get an understanding of what kind of stakeholders and what kind of participants we have. So if I can request the team to launch the first poll so that we can understand the sort of participation that we have today. Yeah, so as you can see on your screen, please select the background that you belong to, and accordingly we can also gauge and try to sort of discuss in the training sessions also what material would be relevant. Yeah, I think a lot of our participants have now given their answers. So we can end the poll and share results. So yeah, we have a lot of students amongst us. We have planners. So the target audience definitely was budding urban practitioners. So we're really happy to know that you were interested and joined in the session. So thanks for taking the poll. Now we move ahead with the next part of our session, which is to move ahead, which is a really important theme presentation by Mr. David Evans, who has joined us from UN Habitat headquarters in Kenya. David is also the coordinator he's currently the chief of the Capacity Development and Training Unit at the UN Habitat headquarters. He's also the coordinator for sub-program 4, titled Effective Urban Crisis Prevention and Response, and has been providing capacity development support to member states, other partners, and of course, UN Habitat staff on a broad range of urban issues, including the implementation of the new urban agenda. He's an urban practitioner with almost 38 years of experience, out of which 17 have been spent with the UN itself. So David, I welcome you and invite you to please present and take the stage.
Thank you, Adishri, and again, welcome to everybody. Yeah, dear city leaders, commissioners from Vijayawada and Mangaluru cities, my colleagues Parul, Adishri, and the country office and other colleagues, distinguished participants of this event. A warm welcome to all of you stakeholders, urban practitioners in India. As Adishri just said, I'm the chief of the Capacity Development Training Unit in UN Habitat in Nairobi, and that's both supporting member states on capacity development towards on urban issues, as well as internal training events for UN Habitat and other colleagues. As you may know, the focus of Urban October currently this year is the climate crisis and sustainable urbanization, in line with the theme of climate action for cities campaign. We all know, as has been said by Parul, the role of cities is critical to the way forward on climate change. The cities contribute to climate change, and at the same time, they're most vulnerable to it. And thus, they're situated in a position to act as stewards and respond appropriately to address and mitigate climate change and climate action. Of course, actions must be taken by all actors at all levels, from government to individuals, but climate resilient cities are the nucleus of a safe and just society to live, work and play. The importance is also recognised in the new urban agenda, which some of you may or may not know about. The new urban agenda focuses on critical commitments from 193 member states on how to make cities, to improve the lives of people in cities, and that's the whole spectrum of people, whether they be residents or migrants or whoever going through cities. The commitments to change are within the new urban agenda, and it's important to know about that, because the new urban agenda is really an accelerator for SDGs and not just SDG 11. If we're to achieve SDGs, cities will play a huge role in that, and the new urban agenda are the commitments for how cities need to change, decided upon, as I say, by the 193 member states. Within that, the environmental dimensions of the new urban agenda on resilience, adaptation to climate change are key highlighted concerns. UN Habitat is supporting member states on the implementation of those commitments, and the monitoring of those commitments and the reporting of those commitments. Unless this is followed up on and supported on, things that are not monitored and tracked, won't progress at the same rate. So along with other UN agencies, we're supporting member states on reporting, and UN Habitat focuses on the commitments around cities within the new urban agenda. So we not only need to strengthen policies, we also need to develop capacities within the localities to expand knowledge and readiness for climate change. You all know that COP26, the United Nations Climate Change Conference, is coming up in Glasgow very shortly. And my colleagues, and I know Serene in a moment will reference that and say more about it. And that builds on the commitments that have already been made at the major international conferences, again, that you know about, from Sendai and Paris, the Paris commitments. I also, just for a second, must reflect on COVID and the response to the pandemic. The recovery from COVID is an opportunity to rethink urban living and address the climate crisis and adapt to the reality of this pandemic and prepare for the future ones, which sadly and inevitably we will be facing in the future. So hopefully this all amplifies the fact that we're all in this together, that all nations, regions, cities, communities are in one common cause to combat climate change. And more importantly, we all agree that the transition to improved urban resilience, sustainability must happen now, that we are decisively joining efforts to protect vulnerable cities. This training session obviously is limited in time, but hopefully will support your efforts towards climate resilient cities through the policies and planning that you're engaged in. With only 90 minutes, maybe we can't change the world, but hopefully the knowledge sharing is useful for you and that it will inspire you to think more through a climate change lens in your planning processes and the daily task. Finally, I would just like to congratulate UN Habitat India office for putting together this timely training session and the whole series of events around Urban October. The progress and impacts that are taking place on the ground at country level and community level are great encouragement for our work and form, if you like, the DNA for achieving sustainable development. Again, I'd like to thank you all, wish you a successful training. I have some conflicting commitments today, but I'm going to try and stay for as long as possible. And I am sure you will all enjoy the training. I'm sorry if I was a bit longer than I should have been. Adishri, over from me.
Thank you, David. And I think you were perfectly in time, so no worries. And also thank you so much for your insights and the apprising us on the focus of the new urban agenda and how important it is for us to take it forward and sort of implement it in the cities, especially in India, and also the context of the pandemic and how we really need to work together to improve the status that we have. We now move into the next part of our session of bringing forth issues and challenges faced by the cities themselves, especially in the context of climate change, and highlighting the strategies that have been adopted by them to address these impacts. So firstly, we welcome and request Ms. Sharda Devi, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Additional Commissioner for Vijayawada Municipal Corporation, to please share her experiences from Vijayawada. She has been working for various government and autonomous departments for almost 19 years. During her tenure at Vijayawada Municipal Corporation, she is playing a crucial role in the fields of administration, policy formulation, and implementation of various government projects and programs. And she is leading various strategic projects that are led by international and intergovernmental organizations such as UNDP, UN Habitat, UNIDO, and IURC. She also has a background in the field of environment. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us today. I request you to please start your presentation.
Thank you, Adishri. First of all, I would like to thank Mansi and Parul for this. For making Vijayawada as a part of this today's program on urban climate challenges and strategies. And then I would like to thank and wish David a very good afternoon. So Vijayawada is being a very tropical city, as you all know. So our association with UN Habitat is almost 2 years. So you all pretty well know about our Vijayawada city. So being a river city, we have so many challenges. Like, first of all, we have a flash floods. Though we don't have a, flood, but because of the insistent rains or come from the uphill areas and all that. So they all been opened, and we are experiencing flash floods just because of the other rivers getting, or the dams getting filled up. So entire water is being run off there. So we experience flash floods, as well as then we have the, being a tropical city, this city is highly humid, and we have the heat waves, and we have also have some rock slides and hill slides. These are the challenges we experience for Vijayawada, apart from other. And for this, we have implemented few strategies within our level. So I'd like to go through a small presentation. I quickly run through our presentation. So, as pretty well know the city and all that. We have as part of the SDMA, we have this CDMP has been developed, City Disaster Management Program has developed, and we are closely working with the state disaster management as well as the city disaster management from district collector and all that. So please, yeah. Though we have analyzed and have given various studies, taken up various studies with NGOs and the universities, surrounding universities, for hazardous risk, vulnerability, and the resilience status of the Vijayawada. And now we are moving on to the Clean Air Action Plan. As part of 15th Finance Commission, we are into Clean Air Action Plan, because we have worked up with the, because we are already working with UNIDO on reduction of greenhouse gases. So we are planning for a Clean Air Action Plan. In this, we are procuring so many stations, air quality monitoring stations, and also we have shifted our cleaning methodology, that is mechanical, manual to mechanical, so that in that mechanical sweeping machines have been taken up, which emit very less carbon dioxides and all that, SOx and SOx, COX. We are implementing, we are practicing green concepts, like most of our officers are being almost into practicing solar energy concepts. We are using this, what is this?
Real-time monitoring system.
We already have a real-time monitoring system and disaster specific management. These are the few photographs of the workers, because they used to work in very, very scorching sun in summer. So we used to give them as part of this DMP program, we have developed some thermal jackets, which cool jackets, they're called cool jackets. We have distributed through our commissioner to all our workers who are engaged in sweeping and all that, so that they can control the sunstrokes and all that. This is the automatic weather station, which gives us that met data. So this met data, following this met data, giving it to all our from command control center, we are giving instructions to our field level staff, and also monitoring various functions. So apart from this solid waste management, Vijayawada is moving towards it. Our journey has been almost to zero waste city. So waste processing, we are turning into a natural way, that is composting, and CND waste plant is also there. Plastic waste collection and recycling centers, Swachhata Kendra, MRFs are all developed. We don't have a landfill and dump site. We already shifted to waste energy plant. So entire our waste is being, because we have taken off the landfills. Earlier, we used to have a dump sites and landfills, because, we experience some methane gas production and all that. So that we want to avoid it. So we have tied up with a nearby waste to energy plant, and we are the major source for them for the waste to energy plant, from which the waste to energy plant, they are producing the electricity and supplying to the grid. So VMC plays a crucial role in that supply of electricity. That's where we are converting our entire garbage into electricity. So technological integration with solid waste management and towards a single-use plastic ban has been already there, and we are since 2 years, 3 years, we are practicing plastic ban here in Vijayawada. So VMC also has bagged few awards in this, and India's cleanest city has been, biggest city has been awarded in last year, and we are hoping for this year also we will sustain it. Next, please. Next. So being in a tropical city and most humid city, we are planning, apart from, all other interventions, we want to make this city into a green city. So we have turned up into, green concepts. Like, we are planning, we have developed 51 parks, and we have taken up the beautification and cleaning up of all the canals. Vijayawada is bestowed with a 3 canal system which are traversing through our city. So those canals have been, the entire waste has been removed and has been continuously monitored without, effluents discharging into those channels and canals. So beautification, we are taking up an eco park. It is under construction, which was earlier it used to be a dump site. With the bioremediation of some 3.5 lakh tons has been removed from them, and it has been, we are developing into an eco park. Soon it will be into a big eco park. Then we have developed 51 parks in and around city, and also we have taken up a massive plantation, approximately 10,000 plantation saplings have been done, and we're also taking up on the hillside also, because we have this Indrakiladri Mogalrajpuram hills. Indrakiladri is that small hill where the holy shrine Kanakadurga temple is there. On top of that also we are taking up this protection as well as from the sapling through helicopters and drones, and also we are in. These are the few glimpses or few shots of the developing parks developed in VMC with the open gyms and kids play equipment and all that. 52 parks have been nearly developed in that. This is an F1H2O park. Move next. F1H2O park. Just because of COVID and COVID protocol, as we are practicing strictly, so there is no public, but it used to be public has been, really appreciating it. This is our earlier this is called Paikapuram Cheru. This is what used to be, entirely clogged with algae and this one. Now we have taken up the rejuvenation of this park, and these are the projected shoots of this park, this Paikapuram Cheru, that is in a canal. So these are the few photographs of the VMC practices. So we engage only for electric cars for all entire our staff, and even our vehicles, garbage vehicles, solid waste management vans, they are run by CNG only. So we are shifting from fossil fuels to CNG vehicle, CNG. So this is our small interventions. Hope I think I have done this. Thank you, Parul. Thank you, Adishri.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for shedding light on the strategies and approaches that Vijayawada is actually adopting on ground to combat climate change impacts, including open spaces, rejuvenation of rivers, and so many multiple strategies. It's really useful for us to know. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. So now we move on to the next presentation, and we invite and welcome Mr. Akshay Sridhar, who is the Commissioner at the Mangaluru City Corporation. Mr. Sridhar has graduated as an electrical engineer before taking a leap into the government sector by cracking the civil services exam. Belonging to the IAS 2017 batch, he has worked as Assistant Commissioner in Bidar and has been serving in Mangaluru in the current posting since August 2020. He is also a marathon runner and likes to read books from different genres. Thank you, Mr. Sridhar, for joining us. I now invite you to present.
Thank you, Ms. Adishri, and thank you, UN Habitat team, for putting up today's sessions, or rather seminar. Also, thanks to the Additional Commissioner of Vijayawada Municipal Corporation for making a presentation showing how Vijayawada has been coping up with climate change. Also, thanks to Mr. David Evans for throwing some light on what UN Habitat would specifically like to do. So moving on, as far as Mangalore is concerned, I would like to speak more on the challenges and the issues that Mangalore city faces with respect to climate change than on the interventions that we have taken so far. So Mangalore, as you all know, is a coastal city, and the major issues come from because of closeness to the sea is one issue, and we also have a huge couple of rivers flowing through the city. So both of them combine and create issues because of climate change here. So coastal, we are ready to develop a full-fledged coastal resilience, which is a big issue because every monsoon there is a bit of sea erosion, and even in the month of May 2021, we had cyclone Taukte, which severely affected Mangalore city because of heavy rainfall and other issues. And we also have issues related to flash floods that occur in the city. Despite having a good, not good but decent stormwater drainage system in the city, still we face issues of flash floods, mainly in times of high tide because of seawater and river water combining with high intensity rainfall, and thereby not allowing free movement of water. This rainfall has increased tremendously over the last few years, and this problem of flash floods is a very recent phenomenon as far as Mangalore city is concerned. And because of high intensity rainfall, again another issue is inside the city itself we have landslides occurring, which creates a lot of havoc in terms of property damage. And so far we have been lucky that we have not seen huge damage to human life. So far we have been incredibly lucky in that way. But in the month of July 2019, we had again severe rainfall, and as the worst could happen, our entire landfill garbage dumping site collapsed in a place called Pachanadi. And so this was prompted by both unscientific management of waste as well as extremely heavy rainfall. So this led to it. But from then on, we have been trying to come back from it and trying to work on both bettering our waste management as well as ways and means to cope up with extremely heavy rainfall. So these issues we continue to face every year. Again, in summer we face severe heat waves because of coastal humidity and issues from it. And Mangalore is also endemic to malaria because of heavy rainfall and water stagnation. And a lot of construction activities keep happening in the city, which again causes malaria as well as a few stray cases of dengue here and there. So these problems continue to plague Mangalore over the years. And as far as one major, as far as building interventions is concerned, in municipal corporations, what we realize more often than not, we end up in a sort of firefighting mode, and there is unfortunately lack of documentation in how we continue to combat the problems coming out of climate change. Because every year, whenever this happens, we sort of fight it. We sort of find solutions. We may take measures to ensure that no major damage occurs. But what are we doing in the longer run? What are we doing to ensure that these do not occur again and again? So this is a major issue that is plaguing a developing city like Mangalore, to be honest. Because on one hand, although the ways and means are being tried, but are we actually living up to the pace in which climate change or global warming is affecting us in total? And also whether municipal corporations can fund themselves to fight this disaster type situation. So these are questions which we struggle with in fighting climate change. It's not that we are not able to do anything, but are we able to do it in a pace bettering the pace in which these issues keep happening to us? We have been taking up many interventions in terms of waste management. Even Habitat has been working with us, and we are trying to create a circular economy for dry waste, which is one thing we are trying to do in terms of dry waste. And in wet waste, we are experimenting with black soldier fly larvae technology, which has been so far fairly successful. And again, we have about 9 lakh tons of legacy waste that has been accumulated in Mangalore. Again, trying to clear this, we have again formulated an action plan, and the coming years we are sure that we'll be able to clear this as well. So with this being the case, there is a multi-pronged strategy to fight issues like this. Again, coastal resilience, community awareness is being developed. The Indian Coastal Guard, the New Mangalore Port Trust, everyone has been helping us in developing coastal resilience and spreading awareness among the fishermen community and people living along the coast, and also coastal to avoid sea erosion, retaining walls are built, and all of this is happening. but how much can we keep on building and spending on this? What is the point where we decide this is enough, this can fight climate change? This is the pertinent question with which we have been struggling. And in Mangalore, as far as construction is concerned, I always feel that we are in a sort of catch-22 situation where because of the heavy rainfall and the topography of the land, we are left with no alternatives but to build concrete roads in most places rather than bitumen roads, because bitumen roads are prone to more damage and they remain high on maintenance. So we take up concrete roads everywhere. But again, the question that boomerangs back at us is whether these concrete roads themselves are creating many urban heat islands, whether that is true. But is there any alternative to concrete roads which we are building throughout the city, which can be avoided in the context of climate change? Which of the evils is bigger or smaller to avoid? So this is one question that that frequently keeps on coming in popular discourse in Mangalore. And as far as to mitigate these effects, we have been taking steps. We have been doing a lot of plantation drives. Spaces have been identified to build Miyawaki forests in the urban areas. All this has been done on a continuous basis. And as far as flood management is concerned, NDMA has also taken a pilot project where a complete survey of all the stormwater drainages is being taken. And we are also in the process of installing stormwater drain flood sensors in multiple places across the city, by which major flash floods can be alerted to the people, and thereby any vulnerabilities can be avoided. So this is something that we are again trying to do. And as far as transportation is concerned, again, it's relatively to say a sort of high income city, so there are a lot of private vehicles plying. So what are we going to do about it? We are building up cycling lanes across the city to encourage more people to take up cycling. And same way, we are trying ways and means to strengthen the hands of public transportation in the city. As far as green spaces is concerned, we are trying to use the best of our resources to rejuvenate various lakes and gardens in the city, which can mitigate climate change in the longer run. All these are being continuously taken up from our side, but but are we really doing enough? This question, why have been keeping on repeating this over and over again, is because of the lack of proper documentation. How much is damage has been happening, and how much have we been doing to prevent it? Is there a balance between it? Has this been properly documented? Sadly, the answer is no, not exactly no, because as far as local knowledge and local documentation is concerned, things are happening. But is there a proper scientific basis to all of it? It's something that we are struggling with, and probably UNABEDAT Habitat taking this up, probably we'll be getting better answers to this question, because unless there is a proper evidence-based study saying we have to do this to mitigate this, and we are going to employ methods like emission trading or involving a system of carbon credits, whether how much far are we going to get ahead in this process? Are we going to leave enough to the future generations to handle this? So this is one pertinent question that we would like to hear. I mean, that we hear from people and that we would like to answer as well. And on this note, I'd like to conclude my short presentation, and would like to hand it over to you, Habitat, to take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sridhar, for not just highlighting the climate change related challenges and concerns faced by Mangaluru, but also the need we really have for long-term and strategically planned interventions instead of just being on a firefighting mode, as you so very well pointed out. Thank you very much for being here today as well. And so before we move into the next segment, I would actually like to request the attendees to take a short poll, especially in the light of the presentations about the cities that we just saw. So can I request the team to launch the second poll, please? So the poll is, do you feel climate change has severely impacted your city? So as you heard, the different types of impacts that we can face is for flooding, heat waves, and basically, especially in the recent decades, what we have been facing. So do you feel your city has a severe impact, or it seems manageable, or there's not really much of a difference? I see a lot of participants have actively, so can we end the poll and maybe share the results? Yes, I think almost 60% of the participants here have, so that's 2/3 of the audience do feel that there is a lot of impact. So as the audience says, we should actually, it is clear that we really need to discuss how to address the impacts that we've been facing, and not just in Indian cities, but across the globe. It is to several degrees of severity, I would say, in different cities. And with this, we actually move ahead to the next training session. We now introduce our first trainer, who is Ms. Serene, and she's the Program Management Officer for Climate Change at the UN Habitat headquarters in Kenya. So Serene, you would have about 20 minutes for the presentation. And let me just introduce you as well. She's an environmental lawyer, specialized in integrating climate change adaptation, urban resilience, and sustainable development into policies, strategies, and plans, with experience in mobilizing climate finance, conducting vulnerability needs assessment, and capacity gap analysis for cities. In her current role as Program Management Officer, she is the flagship coordinator for UN Habitat's 10-year program on resilience settlements for the urban poor, also known as Rise Up, mobilizing and coordinating large-scale investments for urban adaptation and resilience for the most vulnerable urban settlements. So we are really grateful to have you here, Serene. So the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for the invitation. It's a pleasure to have you all here participating at this Urban October event, and also thank you to the country office to invite also headquarters into this as a part of the training. So it's our pleasure as well. Let me start sharing my screen, and Shri, let me know when you can see it.
Yes, Serene, we can see it.
Perfect. I'm just switching into full mood. Okay, perfect. So today's training session, or my session from the training, looks at the urban frameworks and strategies for climate actions. The reason being is now we have heard what are the different vulnerabilities in cities, and we heard of the flash floods, the heat waves, and the rock and hill slides in Vijayawada, whereas we also heard of the different coastal impacts on cities for Mangaluru. And what are the different urban frameworks we can actually deliver or can put in place to contribute and to the resilience of cities from a policy framework, from a finance framework, from a networking framework, partnerships, coordination, and so on. So there are multiple levels that we could do. And today's focus would be to look at two especially very famous frameworks. So one is the nationally determined contributions, very important, in about 10 days when we are having our opening for the climate conference in Glasgow. And the second part is that David already highlighted very much the national urban policies and the call, the resulting from the new urban agenda. So I will focus on how we could actually bring urban climate actions into our national determined contributions. And on the other side, how can we bring climate change into national urban policies? So why is actually UN Habitat focusing on cities, or why should we all have a very strong focus on cities? So one is cities are home to most of the half of the world's of the population. Cities consume over 78% of the world's energy, and they produce more of the 60% of greenhouse gas emissions. So yet cities only make about 2% of the Earth's surface. If you think of that ratio, you will understand why the Secretary General from the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, is saying cities is where the climate battle will either be largely won or lost. And then we have the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's actually in itself also an opportunity. And I think David also mentioned it in his opening remarks. It's the opportunity to provide to reflect, to reset how we live, interact, and rebuild in cities. Why to act now? Why is it actually critical? And why do we have a global climate crisis where we have Greta Thunberg standing up? And why is it important to act now? We now are looking at a unique time of a global framework where different development agendas are coming together. We have the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It was launched in
Siri,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You're a little less audible, so if I can request you to speak slightly louder, that'd be great.
Thank you. I'll try. Is that better?
Yes, that's much better. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So you have the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It was launched in 2015, and it looks at how we have 17 different sustainable development goals and implement in those different goals sustainability. Luckily, we have also one target, the SDG 11, that focus in particular on the resilience of cities. Then we have the Paris Agreement with the target of reducing the temperature, the average temperature, by below 2 degrees in terms of like the GHG emissions that we have, in terms of the climate impacts that we have, and so on. We have the new urban agenda that David introduced. Then we have the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. So all these different frameworks have either climate change mitigation, resilience aspect, housing aspects, so urban aspects, or adaptation aspects included. And therefore, it's actually a great momentum. Whatever we do today, we contribute to multiple development frameworks in one go. We have for you two great guiding documents. So one is on enhancing national determined contributions through urban climate action. I've provided also the links to all publications, all sources, and so on. So when afterwards this presentation can be shared, you have access to that as well as a tool for yourself. And maybe to walk you through what are actually nationally determined contributions. So in 2015, when the Paris Agreement was announced, the member states also committed to have nationally determined contributions that they will revise every 5 years to tackle the goal of the Paris Agreement. And that goal of the Paris Agreement was to limit warming by 1.5 to 2 degrees. And this 5-year circle is now coming to its first cycle. So when we are now in 10 days ahead from COP26, we actually have now the opportunity to see what have member states done to enhance their nationally determined contributions. And a little bit of background as well. How many of those nationally determined contributions are actually looking at urban issues? When we did a quick analysis of that, we've seen that some of them focus on only adaptation measures. Some of them only focus on mitigation measures. Some are completely blind, but actually most of them have in one or the other way urban sectors integrated or mentioned as a key entry point for climate impacts. So if we realize the emission reductions in urban areas, we can actually catalyze our efforts. If we only have it on national level, we might get stuck and we leave out the cities and their potential to also become green and low carbon cities. So my first question to you all, and I hope you're not shy and interact with me. So why should national governments include urban content into their national determined contributions? Imagine you would be now at COP and would be part of the negotiation process. What would be your raise to say what should be the urban content in the NDC? So I'll just check in if anybody wants to raise their hand and give like a quick feedback of your thoughts. And when you give your thought, please tell us your name and your organization, and then what you think is the urban content that we should have in a national determined contribution. And Adishri, maybe you can help me to see the raised hands because I can't see them very well.
I don't think we have any yet. So participants, if anybody wishes to answer, just click on the raise hand icon and we can, so that will prompt us to sort of unmute you. I think, Serene, people are still shy. So
that's fine.
it's okay to, if anybody wishes to drop their answers on the chat box, that is also welcome. And we can move ahead with that in the next sort of question round.
No problem. Thank you so much, Adishri. I provided some answers to that as well, just in case everybody is shy. So why should national governments include urban content in their NDCs? We have 4.2 billion, and it's about 55% living in urban settlements, and this is about to increase. We have a possibility of reducing GHG emission from building, materials, transport, waste, as you have heard with the city examples before, by almost 90% by 2050. So urban areas, and another note on that as well, about 70% of the infrastructure that needs to be built for accommodating the urban trends and the population growth that we see has yet to be built. So if we manage that potential, that window of expected infrastructure is climate resilient, then we actually leverage on meeting our commitment. Then we can target the Paris Agreement, and can be more equal also in our cities. So how can governments support urban climate action? It goes both ways. So national governments can empower and activate their local governments. That means that they reflect what are the needs of local governments in national laws, such as national climate laws. That means also that they are integrating the stakeholders from all levels. So we have a multi-stakeholder approach to understand what are the local climate needs. It means that you have an urban spatial approach. So you realize what is actually possible in terms of mitigation and adaptation potential, that it's integrated in an urban system, because cities are not just a master plan. Cities are systems that work with each other. And then, of course, you have the funding and finance mobilization aspect. If you anchor urban issues in national climate law or in any national law, you also establish mechanism for intergovernmental transfers. You establish that cities have a mandate in national policies, that they can make national governments as well accountable as put forward their own agenda. So pretty much it means that cities can become the driver to change. So I just listed in here in this guidance book what are the key opportunities to engage. It's just like a decision tree from the range of stakeholders to engage, and you can see like it's a multi-sectoral approach. It asks for engaging across governments. It asks for engaging for a fair and inclusive representation of your stakeholders. It means that you need to have a transparent approach of your communication, of your NDC revision process. And it also means that you need to have a strategy on how you actually institutionalize what has been written down in the NDC, so that you have a mechanism in place that already fosters to implement the NDC and the goals and the targets in there. This is just a summary. And then, of course, you also have different entry points. It again, a decision tree, what you need to ask yourself when applying the urban lens. Are, for example, already climate plans in place? Are there any existing urban policies in place that need to be reviewed? What are like mitigation opportunities or adaptation opportunities? And this goes back to what our city representatives have said before. You need to understand what are the vulnerabilities to make risk-informed decisions for your policies, for your investment decisions, and so on. And then have a clear finance strategy with clearly outlined who's responsible for what at what time in which budget, and link it up to the municipal revenue cycle. So there are a lot of like different aspects as entry points that we could think of. And another question, let's give it another try, but if you guys are shy, it's also absolutely fine, and you can post your questions in the chat as well. Which urban climate action would you anchor in the national determined contributions? So if you think of the both city examples that we had before, talking about rock and landslides, heat waves, flash floods, what do you think, what could be actions that we could embed into the national determined contribution? So I'm opening the floor one more time. And if not, don't worry. Adishri, maybe could you help me there again?
Yeah, I'm here. Could you maybe give us an example, Serene, of what you think is climate action that could be done?
Absolutely, yeah. So in my next slide, I have a few country examples.
Okay.
So
any participants who think something that is applicable over here in India? Okay, so we have a response, river rejuvenation, which could be an example as climate action. That is a really good response. Anybody
really
else? Okay, I think that is all for now. So Serene, you please go ahead. Yeah.
No, perfect. You will see here two of the example or multiple examples actually. And I like the approach with river rejuvenation, especially in the aspect as we've heard with the flash floods. When we think of the different adaptation or mitigation measures that we could put in place, it is always good to think about what is the system's approach between them, and how could I have one adaptation or mitigation measures that actually triggers multiple benefits and co-benefits. So for example, if you take rejuvenation of river sites, you could think of like nature-based solutions that then also enhance, for example, the biodiversity. You could think of like the food security aspects that are included in biodiversity aspects when you, for example, reforest mangroves, or when you strengthen riverbanks, how that could avoid the erosion, how the strengthening of mangroves or embankment can strengthen the resilience against storm surges and so on and so forth. So it has like always multiple benefits actually when you think of it, and they are systematically interlinked. So I'm just checking the time, have 8 minutes left. So the other part is, now we had how to bring urban issues into national determined contribution. And the other side of the coin, I mean, there are many frameworks, but the second focus I would like to introduce is how do we bring climate change into national urban policies? So as David mentioned at the beginning, we have the New Urban Agenda, and the New Urban Agenda recognizes the leading role of national governments as appropriate in the definition and implementation of inclusive and effective urban policies and legislation for sustainable urban development. What it means is basically it is a call to national governments to include local needs into national urban policies to make any national law is sustainable urban law, in that sense that you localize all the different 17 sustainable development goals to the local level. You bring them down to the local level. What are national urban policies? Actually, that is not one policy. It's an overarching framework for coordination to address urban challenges and maximize the benefits of urbanization, while also mitigating potential adverse externalities. It's leveraging the potential of urban centers, so cities as, for example, economic hubs, cities as social hubs, and so on, while it also provides a tool to coordinate the work of different sectors and tiers of governments. So what do we mean by that? The rationale of the national urban policies is actually multifaceted. So on one side, you can strengthen multi-level governance. On the other side, you can promote the linkages between different sectoral policies and sectoral government departments. So this is horizontal integration. Then you have also the vertical integration, where you have a stronger linkage between national, regional, local governments and policies. And it promotes the peri-urban, urban and rural linkage. So this is more of a territorial or spatial integration that you have. And then promoting a longer term and national level vision. It's the temporary aspects you can have in a national urban policy. And then at last, which I mentioned before, is due to your development process, the way you do it in an inclusive way, you also have a variation of urban stakeholders and actors in your consultation process. Here are a few case studies from all over Asia Pacific that might be helpful, and each of them are also linked. I have a few scenarios, but it depends really on how much you would like to engage. So basically, just imagine you have a national urban policy in place, but it is undergoing a revision or an update. And my question is always the same. What would be the opportunity here to integrate climate change? So Adishri, again, welcoming your help in case you see a raising hand.
Sure. So do we have any participants who would like to respond? Actually, I have a question. Is it related to, say, the national level or the city level? So where are we envisioning the integration?
Good question. So yeah, so for example, if you think of national urban policy, it basically you could think it from both ways. You could think of the opportunity to integrate national climate change aspects, such as like, grand scale things like mitigating in having more renewable energy. That could be more of a like a whole holistic national aspect, but you could also look at local aspects. So local climate change aspects in national urban policies. And that would be then, for example, the adaptation and mitigation measures you would like to see as an opportunity on the ground. So either way works.
So we're actually getting some good responses on chat.
Cool.
If the participants want to say this themselves, they're welcome to, or should I say it out loud? So one response that we have is from Mr. Santosh Singh, who said that an example would be integrating climate change in land use planning. So an example is New Delhi's the master plan that we have. That's one. And another, Ms. Deepthi Vyas has highlighted that, okay, so I think this is more of a question. Another about how do we sort of planting trees and having green spaces. I think it's instead of development sites, we should have green spaces. That would be a possibility. And we have Dr. Bharti Mahapatra, who said that water should be an important aspect of the urban agenda. So these are a couple of the responses.
Thank you so much. That's amazing, and thank you for interacting with me. That's lovely. So yeah, you are absolutely right. You had looked into different sectoral approaches, which is really good. So water, for example, or to look at the green spaces. So that is like really nice to have in a national urban policy to bring in climate change aspects. And I also like the approach of like the master planning. So the master plan itself can become, or the superior policy to it is basically you can become your national urban policy, and then you integrate the climate change aspects into the master plan. So really excellent aspects that you mentioned. Let me just quickly share with you. So one of the case studies, for example, was in the Philippines, that looks exactly at into this scenario. And the Philippines had a really good climate change policy, but it didn't have like the other way around. It had really good urban policies, but it was going into a revision process. So in that revision process, that was an opportunity actually to take a law from their new climate change policy and integrate it into the revision as well. So that was the opportunity that you could see. So if you, for example, have your national urban policy, let's say, made and committed or enforced in 2012, and you have a revision And in that revision process, in the last 8 years, we've seen how devastating climate change can be. All these new trends can come into your revision. All that knowledge that we now have can come into your revision as well. So it clarifies the context a little bit more. It encourages the dialogue between stakeholders to say like, okay, how did we change actually from the last national urban policy? And it breaks the silos. I also linked a few tools that you could use to do these, making the case for a new national urban policy or a revised one, to do a SWOT analysis and to do a stakeholder analysis. I have a couple of more scenarios, but I also know I'm slightly running out of time. So let me just go through the very end. So we have a couple of more tools and resources, and one of them my colleague Chang will also walk you through. And just in case you're interested to hear more, I hope this is a very good resource pool for you. And if you have any further questions, then always feel free to reach out to the country office colleagues, to the headquarters colleagues, and we are happy to stand by and help you out with integrating your climate action into national urban policy, or the other way around, urban issues into national determined contributions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Serene. And I also thank some of our participants who've been responding. We're trying to make this into a training, like as a simulation of a real life training. Of course, that is tough these days. But thank you so much, Serene, for this really interactive session, and also for making us understand and walking through the strategies at the global level for both mitigation and adaptation actions, which are really relevant for our scenario in India. Also for grounding the theoretical concepts into a real life example. So now I would just move ahead with the next training session that we have. I'd like to introduce our next trainer, which is Ms. Chang, who is the project manager at the Capacity Development and Training Unit at the UN Habitat headquarters in Kenya. Thank you for joining us today. She is a development and environment expert with over 20 years of experience in sustainable development, climate change, and participatory development processes and capacity building for local development, for local government and civil society groups. She holds a master's degree in natural resources management from ITC Twente University in the Netherlands. She has worked with national and subnational governments in Vietnam, with NGOs, and also with bilateral donors prior to her assignment with the United Nations Environment Programme, where she was the researcher and editor for Global Environment Reports. Thank you so much, Chang. I really invite you to move ahead with the session and let me know how I can support you through the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adishri, for the introduction. And I just want to add a small detail that that give me some, a bit of a legitimate and the ground for this presentation that I'm gonna present to you. That also in Vietnam, I was part of the team to plan the very first national plan for climate change adaptation and mitigation way back in 2005, 2006. The very first form of the NAPA, the National Action Plan for Adaptation at that time. And we also understood very well the debate around the balance between adaptation and climate and mitigation measures as well. So let me not to delay further to share my screen so that you can we can start the presentation. Just 1 second. Emma, please, I'm in my session, please. I cannot do that. Sorry, I got a slight distraction. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen, Chang. Okay. Please go ahead.
Great. Yes, let me put it on the slideshow mode. Okay, so I'm going to talk about planning for climate change, especially integrating climate change mitigation and adaptation into the planning cycle. But I can see that from the presentation from the Yada city and from Mr. Schroeder's presentation. You are already the experts. You already have a lot of experience, and I learned a lot from the situation that you are experiencing, and also how you're struggling to find relevant and suitable measures to respond to these changes, both at the immediate time as well as in the long-term perspective as well. So I have a small, and this is one of my favorite image that I inherited from my colleagues, who was a predecessors of Shireen, actually, all the way back from the Durban, the COP in Durban in 2011, showing a climate change building, how the world leaders and community are put together, like effective plan to cope with climate change at global level, built on different layers of elements, including laws in society, economy, and science, knowledge, etc. And I think it reflects very well the picture, the situation, the global situation, but also at the local level. I would like to invite you to join me another interactive session, if you don't mind. There are two ways to join it. The first option is to use any digital device, and you enter the address www.menti.com. Then enter the voting code, as you see on the screen on the slide, 24329169. Or you could also use a handheld device with a camera and scan the QR code. And then the link to the presentation should appear directly onto the screen of your device.
I've added the details on the chat window as well for Chang. So if
Thank you very much. Yes, yeah. Excellent addition. So let me switch very swiftly to that window on the Mentimeter, so that we can see what is the result. Do you still see my screen with the Mentimeter? Yeah, I saw already like some people already logging in, and when you are in, please press the little heart in the corner so that I know you're logged in.
I think, Chang, we're still seeing your presentation, so not the Mentimeter results yet. So
okay.
maybe switch.
Maybe I have to switch. Let me stop. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that is a bit less handy. Yeah. Do you see it now? Do you see it now?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, great, excellent. So actually, I leave the question as at the audience space, but I would like to. So in case you have finished the answer for one question, you can keep browsing and keep answering for the next questions as well. But I will go through one by one questions to check what is the answer in our group. And I would like to keep this session also a little bit concise, since our time is limited. So the first question is to check the mode and the momentum in the room. Are we tired, or are we still curious? Do we still have the right energy to continue with my session? So I see that half of you are still excited, some happy, some are tired. I'm sorry. I hope that you will still be, finding the session useful and still able to continue it to the end. Wonderful. Thank you very much for those who have input in your answer. I will close this question now and move to the next one. But again, the question, the poll are still open for those who enter a bit later to answer from the beginning. So because this is at the audience space, and we will keep this result, and I will share it with the India office. And if you like, we can also share this result with you at the end of after this session. So here we already have a set of names, beautiful, of both the participants and cities. I see here, of course, Delhi and Vijayawada. Sorry about my poor pronunciation. Nairobi. I should have put Accra in here as well. Elulu, Huma. Geneva. So we are covering multi-continents in these sessions, which is wonderful. And also thanks to the internet that it makes it possible. Let me have a quick check about who are in the room regarding the climate change. So we do have some like very experienced experts in the room. One person say that she knew, but most of us in the room here, in the audience are people who are working on a daily basis with something that related to climate change, but we didn't have that background in our academic or the previous trainings. So I hope that this training event, the very short hours, 90 minutes, will still give you some new information. Excellent. So let me move to also explore a little bit about more other cities, about whether your city have implemented deal with work related to climate change adaptation mitigations. So yes, mostly say some project related to climate change adaptation, like very few related to mitigation. And yeah, some of the city have not really touched upon this aspect. So I see the reason why you are here, and probably in the future this kind of pattern would change. Wonderful. Thank you very much for providing your input. And I see here is like the question is about like you can choose only one, the very one impact from the climate change that you feel that is most significant in your city. And I see flooding come out very prominently. And usually in this cloud world, the way they have computing the size of the text probably would be like the more frequency the word is input, then the bigger size it becomes. And beside that, we also have air pollution, flash floods, health hazards, and cyclone. Yeah, a very, very diversified set of impact. I have to say that also they all of them are somehow connected, related to many others. Water pollution I see here as well, and so again, groundwater contamination, global heating. Probably you mean the global warming, the rising temperature everywhere. And yeah, let me move to the next one. We will get back to this set of impact a bit later. And for each impact, I have asked you to provide two problems that you think that contribute, are the factors that contribute to creating this impact. And yeah, poor drainage, I see unplanned development, industrialization, water pollution, sealed surface, urban expansion, lack of green spaces. Excellent inputs, and I'm so happy that we already having this kind of inputs in the ground, which will help a lot for my slides later. Okay, let me start from here. Let's not look at it now. I will switch back to my presentation. Please bear with me about the switching of the screen, because apparently with Zoom it's not possible to switch the screen from one window to another. So, or maybe I couldn't it is maybe my limitation in the technology. Oh, sorry. It should be from the current. Yeah. So let me start with the planning cycle. Of course, many of you are urban planner, and we all dealing with plan on the daily basis at different scale. Excuse me, just 1 second. I'm sorry, I just want to reduce some background noise in the back. So the planning cycle usually, as we presented in the tool, the guide for planning for climate change, which also Sari mentioned in the last slide of one of the last slides of her slideshow, that we have prepared this guide that mapping out all the main phases and the main steps in the planning process, which kind of conceptualize a planning in different contexts. So no matter whether you are working at national level or city level or department or at the project level, these kind of key steps would still apply to you. So the first step is, let me go through about the study, the survey part, well, to see what is the assessment steps, what is happening in the city, why we need to deal with, to address certain issues. So that's related to, now let me also keep it very brief at this stage. It's mostly at this very beginning stage. Probably, instead of get going to the next step rushly, it is still important, and I would emphasize on involving the participation aspect, on trying to map out who are the stakeholder and the important stakeholders and who need to be involved right from the beginning. That including also your counterparts, for example, at the department level or the ministerial level, because you might need them. You might need not only to inform them at the very end or way later at the implementation phase, and that might be difficult to change certain things. So it's good to involve and include, to be inclusive and discuss with different departments, different stakeholders at this stage. So that is one point. The next point at this stage is also to assess the vulnerability, understanding the impact and the level of severity from climate change to the population and to your city. And some city, if you have the resource and if you really have the political drive and will to drive with the mitigation agenda, then you can also do, and this mostly for big city, I mean the mega city in India like Delhi or Mumbai, then you can also think about doing an inventory for the greenhouse gas emission. And I will go just very briefly because most of the content is available in the documents, which we can provide to you also after this session. And I would just like emphasize on these main steps. One thing is that many people ask or could be, oh, sorry, I forgot to mention to you that I'm still working from home. And our residence is near an airport area, so from time to time we might have some also background noise from the plane. Then we know which flight it is because we hear them every day. So many people still a little bit confusing of some basic concepts, for example, like the disaster risk and the climate change impact. And so what is the difference between disaster risk and impact? They are somehow intertwined, but they are not exactly the same. As this image, for example, illustrate one kind of, like distinction, for example, like the impact could be from the climate change of one of the variables could create, like the rising temperature, and the impact could be like consuming more electricity, more energy, and the risks related to that is like the heat stress, even in contributing to air pollution, increasing air pollution in the city, for example, especially because of the temperature that prevent the circulation, especially in the area where congestion often happen. So and so that is a kind of or another one could be like the impact could be the increase of rainfall due to the temperature rising, and then the disaster risks that might associate to that is the flooding, the cyclone, etc. And also linked to that is the frequency, the intensity of these events also often being increased and more severe than it used to be, that used to happen in the past. So that's just one quick stop. And another concept is the mitigation of disaster risks is not the same concept in mitigation for climate change. The mitigation in climate change is to reduce the emission of greenhouse gas. It's totally not real. It's not the same. It's very different from mitigation of the disaster risks. So these are the two concepts that I find that in many offices, many cities, when I discuss with people, they often mix these two concepts of mitigation together. So that's what I wanted to highlight in here. And then after you study your vulnerability, and then you come to the next step on identifying what is the objective, because now you understand the impact, you understand your vulnerability, then you have to choose what is to decide what is the objective for the project. Also, and in here there is the set of tools that we can be used, can be used. For example, Sarine also mentioned them, the SWOT analysis. But one of the classic tools that I still think that is very useful and very practical, also was a great tool for facilitation in the group discussion, is the problem tree. So I will guide you through quickly a little bit on a problem tree, and I remove all the automatic functions, the animation, because of the time. So the problem tree show like you how to say a central problem, and with the central problem, the group will identify what are the consequences related to this problem. And here for example, if you say that the flooding is the problem, like what you have identified in the impact slide earlier, then the consequences would be like, could be like, oh, sorry, if the consequences is the floods, and then the problems that contribute to the consequences, sorry, here could be the lack of drainage, it could be lack of pumping capacity, it could be how to say the concrete surface is too much, so it's kind of I think Mr. Sridhar, he mentioned that, like the concrete road also reduce the capacity to absorb water as well. So these are the kind of problems that have contribute to a consequence of increasing flood in the city, and also of course increasing rainfall, etc. So we would place the consequence as the at the objective level, and the goal level, and see what and set the goal for the project. For example, say the control flood level in the city during monsoon level, and so reducing flood, and addressing, for example, the pumping capacity, for example, so into the river, in the case of Vijayawada, then you really need to pump the water out when the rain comes intensively. Then what are the kind of actions that need to be in place that would contribute to increasing the pumping capacity? So that would be listed as action 1, 2, 3. Now, when it comes to integrating the climate change adaptation measures into different sectors, this could be like related to water management. It could be the same logic could be work with construction sector or transportation sector. I mean, you can find similar issues that related to climate change, and find the activities that could contribute to solve that problem. So yeah, this and usually this this logic usually is placed also in the logical framework that we say in the project planning. Is still a very popular tool and is still used by many donors and many offices at the moment. And with this tool, you also would be able to see the connections and the contribution from the activity to bring out certain results. So we call it the theory of change as well. Sorry, now I can't move my slide. The next step is one of the last steps, sorry, of this identifying objective and activities is also identifying the indicators, how you want to monitor it at the end. And here I also give you an example, for example, like that these are the kind of an indicator that would meet all the criteria of the SMART criteria for an indicator. For example, it should be specific. So like you identify out one item, for example, like the amount of storm water being discharged into river. It should be very specific, and that can be measured by cubic meter or cubic liters. I have put it wrongly. Cubic liter and cubic meters. Yeah, sorry, it's not wrong. And then the target we want to achieve, like by 20% or 15% or 10%, and also in the relevant point, it should not be. It also should help you to define who is it related to. Are you measuring it with in a certain geographical areas or within a certain sector? Then that also give you the relevancy, give you some sense of the scope and the time bound. And this time bound is very important because that also give you will define when you have to get there, the intensity of the intervention as well. Whether you have to check more frequently, like every 3 months or every 6 months or only every 12 months. That is about when that is now, say we have a set of objectives and some activities being listed. Now we move to the next one. What we can do about it? So what can we do? It's more about us, again, about the actions, but it's more about also from all these activities that we have thought about, all this solution, what to do first and what can be done later is also very much the questions that Mr. Sridhar raised before. What we can do in the long term to help us coping with these changes. And then it comes to the more of a prioritization process. And here I would also skip a bit more about the identification. I think that you have exposed to a lot of information. You have seen it, you have heard and discussed a lot about these different measures already. I would also bring out some more suggestions later in this presentation, but here let's focus on the prioritization, because that is somehow one of the key areas in the planning process that we have to do. And we, especially in a process which involves multiple stakeholders, multiple departments, how can we prioritize action and gain the consensus of what is to implement first and what is to be implemented in the longer run. It doesn't mean that it has less priority, but it's for the long-term vision. And some of the long-term vision need to be set out already now, instead of waiting 5 years or 2 years longer down the road. Then often I had this kind of image in my mind about the 4 W's and 1 H, the what, where, when, who, when it comes to like set out the plan and the prioritization. But before we come to the prioritization, I just wanted to flash through very quickly some kind of actions that might be applicable to your city in terms of supporting climate change mitigations or adaptations. Some of them will have both effect. So this, for example, like efficient transportation, so more public transport. It could be more public transport. It could also be having a compact city and people travel by bike. Also, I heard that from the presentation of Mr. Sridhar as well. It could be another option is to build efficient buildings and environmental friendly neighborhoods, which encourage green areas, the more use of environmental friendly materials and design, like this, for example. This is a traditional house model in Malaysia, I believe. And we also have someone from Malaysia attending, joining us from our team, from UN Habitat team as well. Here could also be another actions is that to use more renewable energy, which is more like from the climate change mitigation perspective. Another options in here is to increase the urban density, as I mentioned earlier, like compact city, make sure to encourage energy efficiency, especially within the building system. And here is in Singapore, one of the adaptation measures is to build like water reservoir, the big water reservoir, and to supply for the whole country, for the whole island in this case. But we could also have the restoration of wetland and restoration of biodiversity and the natural system that ensure the level of water in the reservoir for backup options. I forgot that was, just keep my mind for the time being, so that we can use in case of shortage of water supply in the main reservoir for the of the factory, for example. But this also could be served as the very good buffer zone for when during heavy rain period. And also a buffer zone for taking up water from the storm water. One action could be building a seawall like New York did for only about $200 billion. And for the Americans, maybe that's not a great deal, a big deal. I don't know how many cities in the world can do that. Or we could also do this. You might be very familiar with this image. like the green wall around some part of the city. This is Mumbai by the river. By the way, it's not like by the sea, but still it serves as a very good kind of protection for the city, especially when floods coming out to break this storm surge, the sea surge, etc. And heat islands, so you can build a lot of, there's a demand for housing and demand for development, demand for economic growth. So we want to build more and more buildings, more and more projects, higher building, but make sure that you have green space integrated and inserted into this area, so that to reduce the heat islands too, to make sure that the greens, the built up areas is not taking up too much percentage from the green areas, because these are also the areas where it allows to absorb for the storm water when heavy rainfall happens. This is very good experience in the Netherlands, for example, because they are a low country. Then not only the green area, but they build the whole system under the ground to absorb storm water, and the pipe for the intake of the storm water is managed separately from the sewage pipe, so that to make sure that the pump for the storm water can function, more intensively when they have before the rain comes already, so just to prepare for more capacity to absorb water in the city. But also just simple as planting some trees beside the road and make sure that they are well protected. This is one image from the city I come from Hanoi in Vietnam. And another another option is that also regarding the adaptation. This is about coping with flooding and regular flood and increasing level of water, especially for community living by the in the flood-prone areas or by the river bank. Changing the housing design and materials could be an option as well, so that you don't have to worry too much about waking up in the morning and find that the water is coming up near your bed, which also happened quite regularly in the recent years in Vietnam as well. Okay.
Chang, actually, we've extended time. So can I request you to sort of take a few minutes to wrap up and go towards the concluding slide? Would that be possible? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry. But it's actually important for me to go back to this, to the Mentimeter, but I can do that later. So let's continue with the prioritization that I mentioned earlier. Most of the time the criteria for using for the prioritization is based on the urgency, the feasibility, and some other aspect. The urgency, as I listed here, could be the magnitude of damage, the coverage areas, and also very much on feasibility. And that also depends on how you balance, you weigh out between the urgency and the feasibility. Some measures might be put a bit later as a long-term or medium-term intervention because of the limitation in technical know-how or financial resources that allow you to have more time to fight, to seek and improve on these resources. Okay, so we come about drawing the plan. I suggested here, like, a simple table, so that also to be able for you to be able to map out key elements, and some sort of like a structure for the on the narrative to explain that the steps and the implementation on the stakeholders, the context, and the monitoring plan. So it's about it, and you can have also a plan for climate change adaptation, mitigation, or both, as a standalone action plan at the city level, for example. You also can have it as a mainstream work plan into sectoral plans. And that depends on the system you're currently dealing with, and also on the availability of the availability of resources, the opportunity that is presented to you. So let me also go through very quickly some kind of cautious point regarding, like, to make sure you have a vision when you plan, but stay practical. That you also need to try, while we're trying to do the integration, to be involved many sectors, but also we need to stay very clear the role and the responsibility by each actor. And then from that, we, have a try to get in place a mechanism for coordination, but at the same time it needs to stay transparent, so that not any actors would hold back information from the others. So they have the mechanism for exchanging and sharing information in the open way. And one last point I would emphasize is the co-benefit interventions. That don't underestimate it, and don't be shy of when you hear about mitigation, because many of the mitigation measures in your city at the city level can have very positive effect into the improving health and your environment, which have the effect onto the adaptation as well. I see already in your presentation about the clean air, the plastic waste management, etc. So that these are the kind of co-benefit actions that have even multidimensional wins, and also could be very to make your funding proposal more attractive as well. I hope Serene would agree with me, because she's an expert in funding for climate change. And yeah, I have gone through some of these principles for climate change action planning, and we thought, okay, we have a plan, that's it, our job is done. But actually, it's not. It's only the beginning. That is the bad news. But the good news is that you have a very good start. And now you go to go for implementation, for monitoring, and after that you revise your plan and improve in the next circle. So that is a kind of a very brief presentation that I try to walk you through. There would be some, I find that there's one good example about the climate change adaptation plan for Ho Chi Minh City. It's a bit old, 10 years ago, but it's still used as I find it is quite a good template, a good format. I would also share this document with you, and this document on the guide for planning for climate change. So thank you very much for your attentions and your contribution in the session.
Thank you, Chang, and I really apologize for cutting you short.
No problem. We will have the slides and the presentation to share with the participant later.
Yeah, and we will certainly would like to share the link for the guide as well for the participants. So we will coordinate that and share it across along with the presentations. Yeah. So thank you so much, Chang, for joining us today and for helping to coordinate the session. It has been really useful for us to understand the processes, the how, what, who, and when of planning for climate change. And I also thank all the participants for joining us today and for your patience to be here for so long. It has been, I think, really kind of all of you to be here and to patiently go through all the activities. Of course, I thank all the presenters who have been here today. I see David, also Serene and Chang, and the support that we've received from the headquarters has been really good for us, and we really appreciate, and we hope to extend the collaboration further for future efforts. Of course, I thank all the attendees for being here and all the stakeholders who have been joining us. I thank also the commissioners and the additional commissioner from Vijayawada and Mangaluru who presented today and gave us their time and also presented their insights. Can I request my team to also share the feedback form link? So if I can request our participants to take a couple of minutes to just share your feedback on how you felt about the presentation, about how you felt about the sessions. And if you would like to explore more on any of the discussions that we've had today, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know on how you would like to what you would like to get to know. We'll be sharing the presentations with everyone after this, and also the session recording. I also thank our participants who've joined us on the YouTube live link. So it has been really useful for us to have so many viewers and to take the message of UN Habitat forward. Please also sign in for our next session of Urban October, which is on Friday. It's on accelerating private sector participation in resilient and inclusive housing. So those who are interested, please register and join us. And so, yeah, we wrap up with that today. Stay safe and have a great day. Thank you.